A waitress warned the millionaire about his friend. The next day, a luxury car showed up at his. What if I told you that a single overheard conversation in a cafe could change the course of a multi-million-dollar company, expose a web of corporate deceit, and ignite a love story that defies all odds? Buckle up, because Emily's journey from a struggling waitress to a powerful COO is about to show you how integrity, courage, and a dash of serendipity can transform not just a career, but an entire life. Get ready for a tale of betrayal, redemption, an unexpected romance that will make you believe in the power of doing the right thing, even when the stakes are higher than you ever imagined. The bustling noise of the upscale cafe echoed around Emily as she weaved between tables, a tray of drinks balanced precariously in her hands. It had been 3 months since she started working here, and while it wasn't ideal, it helped pay for her mother's medical bills. Emily glided past a table where 2 men in suits were engaged in animated conversation, clearly discussing some important business deal. "Ryan, I really think we're ready to sign off on this deal," said the grey-haired man, his face beaming with joy and excitement. "This will be our biggest breakthrough since we founded the company." Emily wasn't intentionally eavesdropping, but as she approached to refill their water, she couldn't help but notice how the younger man, Ryan, glanced around cautiously before responding. "Of course, David. I'm excited too," Ryan said, but there was something in his tone that made Emily uneasy. "Just make sure you sign all the paperwork tomorrow. We don't want any delays." David nodded enthusiastically, completely oblivious to the tension in Ryan's voice. Emily moved to the next table, trying not to make it obvious that she was listening. "Oh, I left my phone in the car," David said, standing up. "I'll be right back." As David left, Ryan quickly pulled out his phone. Emily deliberately slowed her movements, wiping down a nearby table as she heard Ryan speak quietly into the phone. "Yes, everything's set. David has no idea. Once the deal goes through, I'll have control of everything. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. I've been planning this for months. The company, the assets, it's all going to be mine." Emily froze, her hand trembling slightly as she tried to continue wiping the table. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Ryan, whom David clearly trusted, was plotting to betray him and take everything they had built together. When David returned, Ryan had put his phone away, a false smile plastered on his face. Emily watched them from a distance, her mind racing. She had no personal stake in this. After all, she was just a waitress. But something about the situation nagged at her conscience. Could she really just walk away and pretend she hadn't heard anything? Emily wrestled with her decision for the rest of her shift. On one hand, this wasn't her business. She was struggling to make ends meet, and getting involved in some corporate drama could jeopardize her job. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that if she didn't say something, she would be complicit in a terrible injustice. As her shift came to an end, Emily made up her mind. She couldn't let this happen, not when she had the power to prevent it. Gathering all the courage she could muster, she approached David's table just as Ryan excused himself to take a call outside. "Excuse me, sir," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. David looked up, surprised that the waitress was addressing him directly. "Yes?" he asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. Emily hesitated, her pulse racing. There was no turning back now. I overheard something you need to know," she said, glancing nervously toward the door where Ryan had stepped outside. "Your friend Ryan, I think he's planning to betray you. I heard him talking on the phone, saying he's going to take everything from you once the deal is finalized." David blinked, taken aback by her words. His immediate instinct was to dismiss her. This was Ryan, his closest friend, someone he had trusted for years. Why would she even suggest such a thing? I'm sorry, what?" David asked, trying to process what he had just heard. His voice held a mix of confusion and disbelief. "I know this sounds crazy," Emily continued, her voice urgent, "but I swear I'm telling the truth. I heard him say it himself. He's planning to take over your company and leave you with nothing." David's initial shock began to melt into suspicion. Could this really be true? Was it possible that the man he had trusted for so long was planning such a betrayal? He glanced toward the door where Ryan was still on the phone, doubt creeping into his mind. "You're sure about this?" he asked, his tone more serious now. Emily nodded, her eyes wide with sincerity. "I wouldn't be telling you this if I wasn't. I couldn't let you go into that deal without knowing what I heard." David sat back, his mind racing. He had known Ryan since they were kids. They had built this company from the ground up together. The idea that Ryan would betray him was almost unfathomable. But something about Emily's demeanor made him pause. She didn't seem like someone who would lie about something like this. "Thank you," David finally said, his voice quieter now. "I appreciate you telling me this." Emily nodded and quickly retreated, leaving David alone with his thoughts. The celebration that had seemed so certain minutes ago now felt fragile, on the verge of collapsing. David glanced at the contract on the table, his mind torn. If what Emily had said was true, then signing this deal could be the biggest mistake of his life. As Ryan re-entered the cafe, smiling as if nothing had happened, David knew one thing for certain: he couldn't trust anyone, not even his best friend, without knowing all the facts. The weight of Emily's words hung heavily in the air, casting a shadow over what should have been a triumphant moment. Little did any of them know, this was just the beginning of a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. David sat at the table, his mind swirling with doubt and confusion. He watched Ryan walk back toward him, smiling as if the world hadn't just shifted beneath David's feet. Emily's words echoed in his head: "He's planning to take over your company and leave you with nothing." "Everything all right?" Ryan asked casually as he took a seat again, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside David. David forced a smile, though his stomach turned with uncertainty. "Yeah, just thinking over the deal. You know how it is." Ryan nodded, taking a sip of his water. "I get it. Big decisions. But we've been working toward this for years. It's time to make it official." David nodded absent-mindedly, staring down at the papers laid out before him. They had spent years building this business, and now they were on the brink of expanding it even further. But the words of a waitress, someone he had never met before today, had thrown everything into chaos. Could Ryan really be capable of such betrayal? The thought gnawed at him. They had been through so much together. David wanted to believe it was impossible, that Emily had misheard or misunderstood something. But the sincerity in her voice, the urgency in her warning, made it hard to brush off. "I'm thinking I need a little more time," David said slowly, his eyes still on the contract. Ryan's brow furrowed slightly. "More time? David, we've been over this deal for weeks. We're ready." "I know," David replied, his voice measured, "but I just want to make sure everything's in order. No harm in double-checking, right?" There was a brief flicker of something in Ryan's expression. Was it frustration? Annoyance? David couldn't be sure, but it was enough to reinforce the growing doubt in his mind. "Of course," Ryan said, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Whatever you need, but don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often." David nodded, his decision already made. He wasn't going to sign anything until he had more information. "I'll let you know soon," he said, standing up to leave. Ryan stayed seated, still smiling, but David couldn't shake the feeling that the dynamic between them had changed in that moment. There was a tension now, a hidden edge to Ryan's words that hadn't been there before. David walked out of the cafe, his thoughts a jumble of suspicion, disbelief, and worry. He didn't want to believe that his best friend could betray him, but he also knew he couldn't afford to be naive. Too much was at stake. As he stepped outside into the cool evening air, Emily was waiting near the entrance, her expression anxious. She looked up as he approached, biting her lip nervously. "Did you talk to him?" she asked, her voice low and concerned. David paused, not wanting to reveal too much just yet. "I didn't sign anything," he said, "but I need to find out more." Emily nodded, relief washing over her face. "I was so worried. I didn't know if you'd believe me." David studied her for a moment. "Why did you tell me?" Emily hesitated, looking down at her shoes for a moment before meeting his eyes. "I know it wasn't my place. I'm just a waitress. But when I heard what he said, I couldn't let you go through with it without warning you. It didn't seem right." Her honesty was disarming. She had nothing to gain from telling him this, yet she had taken the risk anyway. David could see that she had been genuinely concerned for him, and that only deepened his confusion. "I appreciate it," he said finally. "You might have saved me from making a huge mistake." Emily shifted awkwardly, clearly not used to this kind of attention. "I'm just glad I could help." David nodded, still feeling the weight of everything that had happened. He knew he needed more than just a warning to act. He needed proof. "I'm going to hire someone to look into it," David said, more to himself than to Emily. "And I can't make any decisions until I know for sure." Emily looked relieved that he was taking her seriously. "That's probably smart. I hope it's not true, for your sake." David gave her a tight smile. "Me too." As David walked away, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. There was one person he knew could help him get to the bottom of this, a private investigator he had used in the past for business matters. But he dialed the number and waited for the line to pip up. "Julian, it's David Sullivan," he said when the voice on the other end answered. "I've got a situation, and I need your help." Over the next few minutes, David explained the conversation he'd had with Emily and his growing concerns about Ryan. Julian listened carefully, asking a few pointed questions, then agreed to start looking into Ryan's finances immediately. "I'll see what I can find," Julian said. "Give me a couple of days." David hung up, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. He had taken the first step toward uncovering the truth, but now came the hard part, waiting. As he headed back to his car, David couldn't help but glance over his shoulder, half expecting Ryan to emerge from the cafe and confront. But the door remained closed and the street was quiet. For now he was in the dark, but soon he would know everything. The next few days were a blur of tension and uncertainty for David. Every interaction with Ryan felt laden with hidden meanings, as if every word from his best friend could be part of the plot Emily had warned him of. But Ryan, ever the charming partner, showed no outward signs of deception. If he was scheming behind David's back, he was doing a masterful job of hiding it. Meanwhile, Julian was digging into Ryan's financial records. David had only trusted Julian with delicate business matters a few times in the past, but he had always been thorough. Now, that thoroughness was essential. As the days passed, David tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. He met with Ryan for routine business discussions, attended board meetings, and even joined him for drinks one evening to keep up appearances. All the while, his mind was buzzing with suspicion, watching Ryan closely for any slip-up, any sign that Emily's warning was true. If Ryan remained the same affable, confident man he had always been, which only served to deepen David's internal conflict. Was he paranoid, reading too much into an innocent conversation overheard by a waitress? Or was Ryan simply that good at maintaining his facade? On the third day, Julian called. "I've got something," he said, his voice steady but serious. "It's not much, but it's a start." David, sitting at his desk, immediately straightened. "What did you find?" "There are some irregularities in Ryan's personal accounts, a few unexplained transfers over the past several months. He's been moving money into an offshore account. It's not illegal by itself, but the timing is interesting, right around the time you two started negotiating this new deal." David's stomach clenched. "How much money are we talking about?" "Not huge sums, but enough to make you wonder. I'm still looking for more details, but it's clear he's been setting something up behind the scenes." David leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "Do you think it's connected to what Emily heard?" "It's possible," Julian replied. "People don't just start moving money like this for no reason, especially not offshore. It's usually to hide something or to prepare for a major shift. My guess is he's positioning himself to make a big move once the deal goes through." David closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Emily had been right. Ryan was up to something, and if Julian's suspicions were correct, it was far worse than David had imagined. "Keep digging," David said finally. "I need more than suspicions, I need proof." "And I'll keep you updated," Julian said before hanging up. David put the phone down and stared out the large window of his office, his view of the city skyline doing little to calm his racing thoughts. How had things come to this? Ryan had been by his side through thick and thin, through the highs and lows of building their business. They had celebrated their successes together and mourned their failures together. And yet now it seemed that Ryan had been planning his betrayal for months, quietly shifting money in preparation for a takeover. David's anger began to simmer. He had trusted Ryan with everything. They had built this company together. To think that Ryan would betray him just for a larger slice of the pie, it was almost unthinkable. The anger burned even hotter when David thought about what Ryan had said at the cafe, the casual confidence in his voice, as he planned to take everything from David. How long had Ryan felt this way? Had he always been envious of David's success, secretly plotting his downfall while pretending to be his closest friend? As the sun began to set over the city, casting long shadows across David's office, he knew that the partnership he had cherished for so long was over. There was no going back now. The only question that remained was how to confront Ryan without tipping his hand too early. David's mind raced with possibilities, each scenario more daunting than the last. But one thing was clear: he needed to act soon before Ryan could put his plan into motion. The clock was ticking, and the future of everything David had worked for hung in the balance. Later that evening, David sat in his dimly lit office, the weight of the day's revelations heavy on his shoulders. His eyes kept drifting to the framed photo on his desk, a picture of him and Ryan at the company's launch party, both grinning widely, arms around each other's shoulders. It felt like a lifetime ago now. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he called out, expecting it to be the night security guard on his rounds. To his surprise, it was Emily who stepped into the office, still in her waitress uniform. She looked nervous, fidgeting with the hem of her apron. "I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Sullivan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to make sure you were okay. After everything that happened today." David was taken aback by her concern. Here was someone who barely knew him, yet she had risked her job to warn him and was now checking on his well-being. It was a stark contrast to the betrayal he was facing from his oldest friend. "I'm all right, Emily," he said, managing a small smile. "And please call me David. I think we're past formalities at this point." Emily nodded, still hovering near the door. David gestured for her to take a seat, which she did hesitantly. "I wanted to thank you again," David continued. "What you did today, it wasn't easy, I'm sure, but it might have saved my company." Emily's cheeks flushed slightly at the praise. "I just did what I thought was right. I couldn't stand by and watch someone get hurt if I could prevent it." David studied her for a moment. There was an earnestness about her, a quiet strength that he found admirable. An idea began to form in his mind. "Emily, if you don't mind me asking, what's your always background? Besides waitressing, I mean." She looked surprised by the question. I was studying economics at the local university, but I had to drop out to take care of my mom when she got sick." The medical bills, she trailed off, looking down at her hands. David nodded, understanding dawning on him. "And the waitressing job helps pay those bills?" "It does," Emily confirmed. "It's not ideal, but it's steady work." David leaned forward, his decision made. "Emily, how would you like a job here at the company?" Emily's eyes widened in shock. "What? I don't understand." "You've shown incredible integrity and quick thinking," David explained. "Those are qualities I value highly. Plus, with your background in economics, I think you could be a real asset to our team." Emily sat there stunned. "But I don't have a degree, and I don't have any corporate experience." David waved off her concerns. "Degrees can be finished. Experience can be gained. What can't be taught is character, and you've shown me you have that in spades." Tears began to well up in Emily's eyes. I don't know what to say. This is more than I ever expected." "Say yes," David urged gently. "We can start you in an entry-level position, but with room for growth, and I'll make sure the salary is enough to cover your mother's medical expenses and allow you to finish your degree part-time if you want." Emily wiped her eyes, a mix of emotions playing across her face. "Are you sure about this? I mean, you barely know me." David stood up and walked around the desk, placing a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder. "I'm sure. In fact, I have a feeling you're going to play a crucial role in what's coming next." Emily took a deep breath, seeming to steel herself. "Then yes, I accept. Thank you, David. I promise I won't let you down." David smiled, feeling for the first time that day a glimmer of hope for the future. "I know you won't. Welcome to the team, Emily." As Emily left the office, her steps lighter and her face beaming with newfound hope, David turned back to the window. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. He knew the road forward wouldn't be easy. Confronting Ryan, protecting the company, and navigating the aftermath of this betrayal would require all of his skill and determination. But now he realized he had an unexpected ally in Emily. David picked up the photo of him and Ryan, staring at it one last time before placing it face down in his desk drawer. That chapter of his life was over. A new one was beginning, filled with uncertainty but also possibility. As he gathered his things to leave for the night, David felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever Ryan had planned, whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them, and with Emily's help, he just might come out on top. The following Monday, Emily stood in front of the imposing glass building that housed Sullivan Enterprises, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She smoothed down her new blazer, a far cry from her waitress uniform, and took a deep breath before pushing through the revolving doors. The lobby was a hive of activity, with smartly dressed professionals hurrying in all directions. Emily felt out of place, like an imposter in a world she didn't belong to, but she steeled herself, remembering David's faith in her, and approached the reception desk. "And Emily Adams," she said, her voice only slightly shaky. "I'm starting today. I'm supposed to meet with HR?" The receptionist smiled warmly. "Of course, Ms. Adams. Take the elevator to the 14th floor. Sarah in HR will be expecting you." As Emily rode the elevator, her mind raced with doubts. Was she really qualified for this? What if she couldn't keep up? What if everyone saw through her and realized she didn't belong? The doors opened, and Emily stepped out into a sleek, modern office space. A woman with a friendly smile approached her. "Emily, I'm Sarah from HR. Welcome to Sullivan Enterprises." The next few hours were a whirlwind of paperwork, introductions and orientation. Emily's head spun with information about company policies, benefits and a new role as a junior analyst in the finance division. By lunchtime, Emily found herself sitting alone in the company cafeteria, overwhelmed by the morning's events. She picked at her salad, watching the other employees chat and laugh around her, feeling more isolated than ever. "So mind if I join you?" a voice asked. Emily looked up to see a woman in her mid-30s with a kind face and stylish glasses. "Of course not," Emily replied, gesturing to the empty chair. "It is me, Sandra," the woman said, sitting down. "I be your direct supervisor in the finance department. Thought I'd come say hello and see how your first day is going." Emily managed a small smile. "It's a lot to take in. I'm Emily, by the way." Sandra nodded understandingly. "First days are always overwhelming. But don't worry, you'll get the hang of things in no time. David spoke very highly of you." Emily's cheeks flushed. "He did?" "Absolutely. It's not often David personally recommends someone for a position. You must have made quite an impression." As they chatted, Emily began to relax a little. Sandra was warm and encouraging, answering Emily's questions and offering advice. By the time lunch was over, Emily felt more at ease. "Ready to dive in?" Sandra asked as they walked back to the finance department. So Emily nodded, feeling a spark of determination. "Ready as I'll ever be." The afternoon passed in a blur of spreadsheets, financial reports, and market analyses. Emily's head swam with numbers and unfamiliar terms, but she was determined to prove herself. She stayed late, poring over documents and asking Sandra questions whenever she got stuck. As the days turned into weeks, Emily slowly began to find her footing. She threw herself into her work, staying late most nights to catch up and learn as much as she could. Her background in economics, though incomplete, gave her a foundation to build on, and she found herself genuinely enjoying the challenges of financial analysis. However, not everyone was as welcoming as Sandra. Emily couldn't help but notice the whispers and curious glances from some of her colleagues. One day she overheard a conversation in the break room that made her blood run cold. "I heard she was a waitress before this," one woman said in a hushed tone. "Can you believe it? How does someone go from serving coffee to working in corporate finance?" "Must have connections," another replied. "Or maybe she's just really good at serving more than coffee, if you know what I mean." Emily felt her cheeks burn with shame and anger. She wanted to confront them, to defend herself, but fear held her back. Instead, she threw herself even harder into her work, determined to prove her worth through her actions. One evening, as Emily was working late again, she noticed a discrepancy in one of the financial reports she was reviewing. It was subtle, easy to miss if you weren't paying close attention, but it could have significant implications for the company in these quarterly projections. Her heart racing, Emily double and triple checked her findings. She was sure she was right, but doubt nagged at her. What if she was wrong? What if she made a fool of herself by bringing this up? Taking a deep breath, Emily made her decision. She couldn't stay silent. Not when it could impact the company. She gathered her notes and headed to Sandra's office, relieved to see the light still on. "Sandra," Emily said, knocking softly on the open door. "Do you have a minute? I think I found something in the Q3 projections." Sandra looked up from her computer, surprise evident on her face. "Of course, Emily. What is it?" Emily laid out her findings, explaining the discrepancy she'd discovered and its potential impact. As she spoke, she saw Sandra's expression shift from skepticism to concern. "This is significant," Sandra said when Emily finished. "If you're right about this, it could change our entire strategy for the next stratiter." Emily nodded, her throat dry. "I know it's a big claim, especially coming from me, but I've checked and rechecked the numbers. I'm confident in my analysis." Sandra studied Emily for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, let's take this to David. He needs to know about this immediately." As they walked to David's office, Emily felt a mix of fear and excitement. This was her chance to prove herself, to show that David's faith in her wasn't misplaced. David listened intently as Emily presented her findings, his brow furrowed in concentration. And when she finished, he leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Impressive work, Emily," he said. "This is exactly why I wanted you on our team. Your fresh perspective and attention to detail have potentially saved us from a major miscalculation." Emily felt a rush of pride and relief. "Thank you, David. I'm just glad I could help." "Sandra," David continued, "I want you and Emily to lead a task force to review all our projections for the next year. If there's one discrepancy, there might be others. Emily, are you up for the challenge?" Emily nodded, feeling a surge of confidence. "Absolutely. I won't let you down." As they left David's office, Sandra turned to Emily with a grin. "Well done, rookie. Looks like you're going to fit in just fine here." For the first time since starting her new job, Emily felt like she truly belonged. She had faced her doubts, stood up to the whispers, and proven her worth. There would be more challenges ahead, she knew, but now she felt ready to face them head-on. As she gathered her things to finally head home for the night, Emily couldn't help but smile. She had taken a risk by warning David about Ryan, and now she was on a path she never could have imagined. Whatever came next, she was determined to make the most of this opportunity. Little did she know, the biggest challenges were yet to come, as the situation with Ryan was far from over, and the corporate world she was just beginning to navigate was about to become much more complicated. Weeks turned into months, and Emily continued to thrive in her new role at Sullivan Enterprises. Her dedication and sharp analytical skills had earned her the respect of her colleagues, and even those who had initially doubted her were beginning to come around. David watched her progress with a sense of pride, feeling vindicated in his decision to bring her on board. However, the calm that had settled over the company was about to be shattered. One crisp autumn morning, David arrived at the office to find a grim-faced security officer waiting outside his door. "Mr. Sullivan, I think you should see this," the officer said, handing David a sealed envelope. David frowned as he took the envelope, his name printed neatly across the front. He could feel something heavy inside, a USB drive. "Where did this come from?" he asked. "It was delivered to the front desk this morning. No return address, just your name," the officer explained. David's mind raced. It had been months since Ryan's betrayal, and while his legal team was handling the frozen accounts and the fallout, David had largely moved on. But now, seeing the envelope and the mysterious USB drive, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was connected to Ryan. "Thanks," David said quietly, dismissing the officer. He quickly made his way into his office, locking the door behind him. He sat at his desk, staring at the USB drive in his hand, wondering if he should open it or contact Julian, his investigator, first. After a moment of deliberation, David plugged the drive into his computer. A single video file popped up on the screen. Heart pounding, he clicked on it, and the video began to play. The grainy footage showed Ryan sitting in what looked like a hotel room. He wore a smug expression, leaning back in his chair as he addressed the camera directly. "But David," Ryan's voice filled the room, dripping with disdain, "by now you're probably thinking you've won. You froze my accounts, cut me off from the company, and ruined everything I worked for. But here's the thing, you didn't destroy me. Not by a long shot." David clenched his jaw, anger rising in his chest as Ryan's words filled his ears. "I've still got cards to play," Ryan continued, his smirk widening. "And I've been busy since our little fallout. You think you can just take everything from me and walk away clean? I don't think so. I've been gathering information, David. Information that could destroy you, your company, and everything you've built. You might have caught me off guard last time, but now I'm prepared." David's hands tightened into fists as Ryan's words struck home. What kind of information did Ryan have? Was it real, or was this just another one of his manipulative ploys? Ryan leaned closer to the camera, his expression darkening. "I've made connections, David, powerful ones. And I'm not just talking about the business world. You might want to check the headlines soon. Let's just say when the media gets a hold of what I have, your precious reputation will be in tatters." The video ended abruptly, leaving David staring at the screen in stunned silence. His mind raced. What could Ryan possibly have on him? David had always been cautious, making sure his dealings were above board, but Ryan was resourceful. If he had managed to dig up something damaging, even if it wasn't true, the mere implication could ruin everything. David sat back in his chair, breathing heavily as the reality of the situation set in. Ryan was back, and this time he was playing dirty. The legal battles had been one thing, but now Ryan was threatening to destroy David's reputation through the media. It was a new kind of warfare, one that could unravel everything David had built, both personally and professionally. Without wasting any more time, David grabbed his phone and dialed Julian. "Julian, it's David. We've got a problem," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "What's going on?" Julian asked immediately, picking up on David's tone. "It's Ryan. He just sent me a video. He's threatening to go public with something, says he's been gathering information on me, and he's planning to leak it to the media." Julian was silent for a moment, then his voice came through the line, calm and focused. "All right, don't panic. We need to handle this carefully. First, send me the video, and I'll have my team analyze it and see if there's any way to trace where it was filmed. We need to find out where Ryan is and what he's really planning." David nodded, even though Julian couldn't see him. "I'll send it over right away." "Good. In the meantime, don't engage with him. He's trying to provoke a reaction, and the more calm and calculated we are, the better chance we have of stopping him before he does any real damage. David hung up the phone and immediately sent the video to Julian. He leaned back in his chair, trying to steady his breathing. Ryan was dangerous, and now more than ever, David needed to be one step ahead. But this wasn't just about business anymore. Ryan was out for revenge, and he wasn't going to stop until David was ruined. As the hours passed, David worked closely with his legal team and Julian's investigators to prepare for whatever Ryan might throw at me. But despite their efforts, there was no way to predict exactly what Ryan had planned. The uncertainty gnawed at David, making it hard to focus on anything else. Later that evening, as David sat in his office, Emily knocked on the door. "David?" she asked softly, stepping inside when he waved her in. "I heard there's something going on. Are you all right?" David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's Ryan. He's back, and he's threatening to go public with something damaging. I don't know what he has, but it could be bad." Emily's face fell, her expression filled with concern. "I thought he was gone for good." "So did I," David replied, his voice tight. "But apparently I underestimated him." Emily sat down across from him, her eyes searching his face. "Is there anything I can do to help?" David looked at her, feeling a surge of gratitude for her loyalty. She had been by his side through everything, and now more than ever, he needed people he could trust. "Just keep doing what you've been doing," David said finally. "I'm handling it, but I might need your support if this gets worse." Emily nodded, her expression resolute. "You can count on me, David. Whatever happens, we'll get through it together." As Emily left the office, David leaned back in his chair, staring out at the darkened city skyline. Ryan might have come back with a vengeance, but David wasn't going to let him win. Not this time. He was ready for whatever came next, and with Emily and his team by his side, he felt a glimmer of hope in the face of the storm that was surely coming. The tension in the air was thick in the days following Ryan's threat. David had barely slept, his mind consumed with worry over what Ryan might have in store. Every morning he checked the news, bracing himself for a potential bombshell, but so far there had been nothing. It was as if Ryan was playing a waiting game, letting the anticipation gnaw away at David's nerves. And Emily noticed the change in David's demeanor. He was more withdrawn, his usual confident stride replaced by a tense, hunched posture. As she wanted to help, but wasn't sure how. The dynamic between them had shifted subtly since she started working at the company, and she found herself increasingly aware of the fine line between professional concern and personal involvement. One evening, as most of the staff had gone home, Emily decided to check on David. She found him in his office, surrounded by stacks of papers, his tie loosened and hair disheveled. "David," she called softly from the doorway. "It's late. Maybe you should call it a night." David looked up, his eyes bloodshot from staring at screens all day. "Emily, I didn't realize you were still here." "I was finishing up some reports," she said, stepping into the office. "Is everything okay? You seemed on edge lately." David sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I'm fine. It's just this situation with Ryan, and I can't shake the feeling that he's about to drop a bomb on us." Emily moved closer, perching on the edge of his desk. "Has there been any news?" "Nothing concrete," David replied, rubbing his temples. "Julian's been working around the clock, but Ryan's covered his tracks well. We don't know what he has or when he plans to use it." Without thinking, Emily reached out and placed her hand on David's arm. "We'll figure it out. Whatever he throws at us, we'll handle it together." David looked at her hand, then up at her face. There was a moment of charged silence, the air between them suddenly electric. Emily felt her heart rate quicken, aware of how close they were, how intimate this moment felt. David cleared his throat, breaking the spell. "Thank you, Emily. Your support means a lot." Emily withdrew her hand, feeling a blush creep up her neck. Of course that's what friends are for, right? Another beat of silence passed before David spoke again. "Emily, I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done, not just with the Ryan situation, but your work here. You've become an invaluable part of this company." Emily smiled, warmth spreading through her chest at his words. "Thank you, David. That means a lot coming from you." As they looked at each other, both became acutely aware of the shift in the atmosphere. The professional boundaries that had always existed between them seemed to blur, replaced by something more complex, more charged. David stood up abruptly, breaking the moment. "We should both head home. It's late, and tomorrow's going to be another long day." Emily nodded, standing as well. "Right, of course. Good night, David." As she turned to leave, David called out, "Emily?" She paused at the door, looking back at him. "Yes. Be careful." If Ryan is planning something, he might try to use the people close to me. Just watch your back, okay? Emily felt a shiver run down her spine at his words. I will. You too, David. As Emily left the office, her mind was whirling. The conversation with David had left her feeling off balance, caught between her growing personal feelings for him and the professional relationship they needed to him. She knew she should keep her distance, focus on the work and the looming threat from Ryan. But part of her couldn't help but wonder if David felt the same confusing mix of emotions she did. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. David had the entire team working overtime, combing through financial records, media reports, and any other potential source of information Ryan might try to exploit. Emily threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction from her conflicted feelings. However, the constant stress and long hours were taking their toll on everyone, especially David and Emily. Their interactions became strained, marked by short tempers and misunderstandings. One afternoon, during a particularly tense strategy meeting, things came to a head. Emily was presenting her analysis of potential vulnerabilities in the company's public image when David interrupted her. This isn't good enough, he snapped, frustration evident in his voice. We need concrete solutions, not more problems to worry about. Emily felt her cheeks flush with anger and embarrassment. I'm trying to be thorough, David. We can't afford to overlook anything. What we can't afford is to waste time on hypotheticals, David retorted. Ryan could strike at any moment, and we're sitting here discussing maybes and what-ifs. The room fell silent, the tension palpable as David and Emily glared at each other. Finally, Emily gathered her papers and stood up. Boing, if my work isn't up to your standards, perhaps I should step aside and let someone more qualified handle it, she said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. As she stormed out of the room, David called after her, Emily, wait. But she was already gone, leaving David to face the shocked faces of the rest of the team. He dismissed the meeting, then slumped in his chair, the weight of his actions settling heavily on his shoulders. Emily found herself in the stairwell, trying to calm her racing heart and blink back the tears that threatened to fall. She knew David was under immense pressure, but his words had stung deeply. For the first time since joining the company, she felt truly out of her depth. But a few minutes later, she heard the door open and familiar footsteps approaching. She didn't need to turn around to know it was David. Emily, he said softly, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. She took a deep breath before facing him. No, you shouldn't have. I know you're stressed, David, but I'm doing my best. So we all are. We all are. David nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I know. You've been amazing through all of this. I feel like I'm losing control, and I took it out on you. It won't happen again. Emily studied his face, seeing the exhaustion and worry etched in every line. Despite her anger, she felt a surge of compassion for him. We're all on edge, David, but we can't turn on each other. That's exactly what Ryan wants. David stepped closer, his voice low and intense. You're right. I don't know what I'd do without you, Emily. You're important to me, more than just as an employee. Emily's breath caught in her throat at his words. She knew they were treading dangerous ground, but in that moment she couldn't bring herself to care. David, Before she could finish her thought, David's phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered it, his face paling as he listened to the person on the other end. I understand. We'll be right there, he said before hanging up and turning to Emily with a grim expression. It's Julian. He's found something. We need to go now. As they rushed out of the stairwell, the unfinished conversation hung between them, a testament to the complicated emotions and unresolved tension that had become a part of their relationship. But for now, they had to focus on the threat at hand. Whatever Ryan had planned, they would face it together. Personal feelings and professional boundaries blurred in a complex web of loyalty, trust, and something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. As David and Emily rushed to meet Julian, the unresolved tension between them simmered beneath the surface. They arrived at Julian's office, a nondescript building on the outskirts of the city, both slightly out of breath from their haste. Julian greeted them with a grim expression. We've got a problem, he said, ushering them into a room filled with monitors and stacks of documents. Ryan's been busy. David's jaw clenched. What has he done? Julian pulled up a series of financial reports on one of the screens. He's been systematically targeting your international expansion project. Remember those irregularities we found in his accounts? It turns out he's been using that money to bribe officials in key countries where you're planning to expand. Emily gasped. But that project is crucial for the company's growth. We've been working on it for months. Exactly, Julian nodded. Ryan knows how important it is. He's trying to sabotage it from the inside out. David slumped into a chair, his face pale. How bad is it? Bad enough, Julian replied. We've traced bribes in at least 3 countries. If this gets out, it could not only derail the expansion but also lead to serious legal consequences for Sullivan Enterprises. Emily's mind raced. But we didn't authorize any of this. Surely we can prove it was Ryan acting alone. Julian shook his head. It's not that simple. Ryan was a high-ranking executive in the company. In the eyes of the law, his actions could be seen as representing the company. David stood up abruptly, pacing the room. We need to get ahead of this. Emily, I need you to go through every detail of the expansion project. Find any inconsistencies, any sign of Ryan's interference. Julian, keep digging. I want to know every move Ryan's made, every person he's contacted. As they left Julian's office, Emily could see the weight of the situation bearing down on David. She reached out, touching his arm gently. We'll figure this out, David. We won't let Ryan win. David gave her a tired smile, his hand briefly covering hers. I know. I'm glad you're here, Emily. The moment passed and they both pulled away, acutely aware of the complexities in their relationship. But now wasn't the time to address it. They had work to do. Over the next few weeks, Emily threw herself into the expansion project with renewed vigor. She worked tirelessly, often staying at the office long after everyone else had gone home. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed. One evening, as she was poring over financial reports, Sandra stopped by her desk. Emily, can I have a word? Emily looked up, surprised to see her supervisor still in the office. Of course, Sandra. What's up? Sandra sat down, her expression serious. I've noticed you've been putting in a lot of extra hours lately. Is everything okay? Emily hesitated, unsure how much she could reveal about the situation with Ryan. I'm just trying to make sure everything's in order with the expansion project. It's crucial for the company. Sandra nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly. I understand that. But I can't help but notice that you seem to have a special interest in this project and in the company's well-being in general. Emily felt her cheeks flush. I'm just doing my job, Sandra. Are you? Sandra leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing a lot more than that. Your relationship with David, for instance. Emily's heart raced. David? I don't know what you mean. He's my boss, that's all. Sandra raised an eyebrow. Emily, I've been in this business a long time. I know what I see. Just be careful. Office relationships can be complicated, especially when there's a power imbalance. As Sandra left, Emily sat back in her chair, her mind whirling. Was her relationship with David Reed really that obvious? And more importantly, was Sandra right to be concerned? She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing back on the task at hand. As she dug deeper into the expansion project, she began to uncover more of Ryan's interference. It was subtle, but once she knew what to look for, the pattern became clear. Emily compiled her findings and headed to David's office to report. She found him on the phone, his voice tense. I understand the concerns, Mr. Tanaka, but I assure you Sullivan Enterprises is committed to ethical business practices, David was saying. He noticed Emily and held up a finger, indicating he'd be done soon. Emily waited patiently, her mind drifting to Sandra's words. She couldn't deny that her feelings for David had grown beyond simple admiration or friendship. But was it interfering with her work? Was she too emotionally invested? David's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Sorry about that, he said, hanging up the phone. Our partners in Japan are getting nervous. Rumors about the bribes are starting to circulate. Emily nodded, pushing her personal concerns aside. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I've found something in the expansion plans. She laid out her findings, explaining how Ryan had manipulated certain aspects of the project to make it more vulnerable to outside interference. As she spoke, she could see David's expression darkening. This is worse than we thought, he said when she finished. If we don't act fast, we could lose everything we've worked for. Emily leaned forward, her voice firm. Then we need to act now. I have an idea, but it's risky. David met her gaze, a spark of hope in his eyes. I'm listening. Emily outlined her plan. It involved a complete restructuring of the expansion project, cutting ties with any potentially compromised partners, and an aggressive push into new markets that Ryan hadn't targeted. It's bold, David said when she finished. It could save the project, but it could also backfire spectacularly if we're not careful. Emily nodded. I know, but I think it's our best chance. David stood up, moving around the desk to stand next to her. You've put a lot of thought into this, haven't you? I have, Emily admitted. This company, it means a lot to me, David. Not just because it's my job, but because of what it represents, what you've built here. David's expression softened. Emily, Before he could finish, there was a knock at the door. Sandra entered, her eyes widening slightly at seeing David and Emily standing so close together. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, her tone neutral, "but the board is requesting an emergency meeting. They've heard about the bribery allegations." David straightened, his professional demeanor sliding back into place. "Thank you, Sandra. I'll be right there." He turned to Emily. "We'll continue this discussion later. In the meantime, start putting your plan into motion. We don't have much time." As David left with Sandra, Emily couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment. What had he been about to say? And more importantly, what did she want him to say? Over the next few days, Emily worked tirelessly to implement her plan. She coordinated with teams across the globe, restructured financial models, and prepared presentations for potential new partners. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. However, as the project progressed, she began to notice a shift in the office dynamics. Whispers followed her through the hallways, and she caught more than one colleague giving her speculative looks. It all came to a head during a department meeting. Emily was presenting her revamped expansion strategy when one of her colleagues, Mark, interrupted. "This is a pretty drastic change from our original plan," he said, his tone skeptical. "How did you come up with this on your own?" Emily felt her cheeks flush. "I didn't come up with it on my own. I worked with various teams and—" Mark cut her off. "But you're leading the charge. It's just interesting that someone so new to the company would have so much influence over such a crucial project." The implication in his words was clear. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but Sandra beat her to it. "Emily's work speaks for itself," Sandra said firmly. "If you have specific concerns about the strategy, Mark, I suggest you raise them professionally rather than resorting to insinuations." The meeting continued, but Emily could feel the tension in the room. As everyone filed out, Sandra held her back. "Don't let them get to you," Sandra said softly. "You're doing good work, Emily, but you need to be prepared. People are going to talk, especially given your unique position here." Emily nodded, grateful for Sandra's support, but also troubled by her words. She knew the situation with David was complicated, but she hadn't realized how it might be perceived by others in the company. As she headed back to her desk, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from David. "Need to see you in my office. Urgent." Her heart racing, Emily made her way to David's office, unsure of what awaited her. Was it about the project? Or was it about them? As she knocked on his door, Emily realized that in the whirlwind of the past few weeks, the lines between her professional life and her personal feelings had become irrevocably blurred. Whatever happened next would shape not just the future of the company, but her future as well. Emily entered David's office, her heart pounding with anticipation. She found him standing by the window, his back to the door, shoulders tense. As she closed the door behind her, David turned, and Emily was struck by the haggard look on his face. "David?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "What's wrong?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Emily had come to recognize as a sign of extreme stress. "It's my daughter, Lily," he said, his voice strained. "She's in the hospital." Emily's eyes widened. She knew David had a teenage daughter, but he rarely spoke about his personal life at work. "Is she okay?" David shook his head, slumping into his chair. "Car accident. She's stable, but it's bad, Emily. They're not sure if she'll—" His voice broke, unable to finish the sentence. Without thinking, Emily moved around the desk and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, David. Is there anything I can do?" He looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed and filled with a vulnerability she had never seen before. "I need to be with her, Emily. But the company, with everything that's happening with Ryan and the expansion project—" Emily squeezed his shoulder gently. "Go be with your daughter, David. The company will be fine. We'll handle things here." David covered her hand with his own, the touch sending a jolt through Emily. "I don't know how long I'll be gone. I can't ask you to." "You're not asking," Emily interrupted firmly. "I'm offering. We're a team, remember?" A ghost of a smile flickered across David's face. "What would I do without you and Millie?" The moment hung between them, charged with unspoken emotions. Then David stood, breaking the contact. "I'll need to inform the board. Can you gather the senior management team? We need to establish a chain of command while I'm away." Emily nodded, slipping back into professional mode despite the turmoil of emotions inside her. "Of course. I'll take care of it right away." As David left to be with his daughter, Emily found herself thrust into a whirlwind of activity. The news of David's absence sent shockwaves through the company. The board was concerned about leadership during this crucial time, and rumors began to circulate about the stability of Sullivan Enterprises. Emily worked tirelessly to keep things running smoothly. She coordinated with Sandra and other department heads, reassured nervous investors, and continued to push forward with the restructured expansion plan. But as the days turned into weeks, the strain began to show. One evening, as Emily was working late again, Sandra stopped by her office. "Emily, we need to talk," Sandra said, her tone serious. Emily looked up from her computer, exhaustion evident on her face. "What is it, Sandra?" Sandra sat down, her expression concerned. "You're doing an admirable job stepping up in David's absence, but people are starting to ask questions." Emily frowned. "Questions about what?" "About you," Sandra said gently. "About your relationship with David, and why he left you in charge instead of someone more senior." Emily felt a flash of anger. "I'm not in charge. I'm just doing what needs to be done to keep the company running." Sandra held up a placating hand. "I know that, and so do most of us who work closely with you, but perception matters, Emily. And right now the perception is that you've been given an unusual amount of authority for someone at your level." Emily slumped back in her chair, the weight of the situation hitting her. "What am I supposed to do, Sandra? Just step back and let things fall apart?" Sandra shook her head. "No, of course not, but we need to be strategic about this. And maybe it's time to bring in some outside help, someone with more experience to take the lead publicly, while you continue to manage things behind the scenes." As much as it stung her pride, Emily knew Sandra was right. The last thing the company needed right now was more instability or gossip. "Okay," she said finally. "Who did you have in mind?" Over the next few days, Emily worked with Sandra to bring in Thomas Redding, a respected business consultant with experience in crisis management. On the surface, Thomas took the lead, becoming the face of Sullivan Enterprises in David's absence. But behind the scenes, Emily continued to be the driving force, guiding the company through the turbulent waters. Despite the challenges, Emily found herself thriving under the pressure. She was making decisions that impacted the entire company, steering them through the crisis with Ryan and keeping the expansion project on track. But as weeks turned into a month, she couldn't ignore the growing void left by David's absence. Late one night, as Emily was preparing to finally head home, her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Are you still at the office?" Her heart raced as she replied, "Yes. Is everything okay?" A moment later, her phone rang. Emily, David's voice came through, sounding tired but relieved. "Lily's awake. The doctors think she's going to make a full recovery." Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Oh, David, that's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you both." There was a pause before David spoke again. "Emily, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. Sandra's been keeping me updated. You've been incredible." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "You don't need to thank me, David. I'm just glad I could help." Another pause, longer this time. "I miss you," David said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "I miss you too," she admitted, her voice equally quiet. The silence that followed was filled with unspoken emotions and complicated feelings. Finally, David cleared his throat. "I should be back in a few days. We have a lot to talk about." As Emily hung up the phone, she felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. David was coming back, and with him would come a reckoning, not just for the company, but for their relationship as well. But whatever happened next would change everything, and Emily wasn't sure if she was ready for it. The news of David's imminent return sent a ripple of excitement and anxiety through Sullivan Enterprises. For Emily, the emotions were even more complex. She had grown accustomed to her newfound responsibilities and the respect she had earned from her colleagues. But she also longed for David's steady presence and guidance. As she prepared for David's return, Emily threw herself into finalizing the details of the restructured expansion plan. She was in the middle of reviewing some financial projections when Thomas Redding, the crisis management consultant, knocked on her office door. "Emily, do you have a moment?" Thomas asked, his expression serious. "Of course, come in," Emily replied, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Thomas sat down, placing a folder on the desk between them. "I've been going over the numbers for the expansion project, and I've found some discrepancies." Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. What kind of discrepancies? Thomas opened the folder, revealing a series of complex financial statements. "These projections you've put together are impressive, but they're also incredibly optimistic. I'm concerned that we might be overstating the potential returns to make the project look more attractive to investors." Emily frowned, leaning forward to examine the documents. "I stand by these numbers, Thomas. We've done extensive market research and—" "I understand," Thomas interrupted gently. "But given the current situation with Ryan and the bribery allegations, we need to be above reproach. Even the appearance of financial manipulation could be disastrous." Emily felt a flash of indignation. "Are you suggesting I'm manipulating the numbers?" Thomas held up his hands placatingly. "Not at all. I believe you're acting in good faith, but we need to consider how this might look to outsiders, especially regulators who might already be scrutinizing us because of Ryan's actions." As much as she wanted to argue, Emily knew Thomas had a point. The company was under a microscope, and they couldn't afford even a hint of impropriety. Scaling back the projections could jeopardize the entire expansion project, potentially costing Sullivan Enterprises millions in lost opportunities. "What do you suggest?" Emily asked, a voice tight with tension. Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "I think we need to revise these projections. We make them more conservative. It might mean scaling back some aspects of the expansion, but it will put us on firmer ground legally and ethically." Emily nodded slowly, her mind racing. "I'll need some time to look this over and make the necessary adjustments." "Of course," Thomas said, standing up. "But Emily, we need to move quickly on this. David will be back soon, and we need to present him with a solid, unimpeachable plan." As Thomas left, Emily slumped in her chair, feeling the weight of the decision before her. She knew that revising the projections was the safe, ethical choice. But a part of her rebelled against the idea. She had worked so hard on this plan, poured her heart and soul into it. It felt like admitting defeat, like letting deceit. For the next few hours, Emily agonized over the decision. She went over the numbers again and again, looking for a way to justify original forms. So the more she examined them, the more she realized Thomas was right. They were optimistic, perhaps too optimistic. As the evening wore on, Emily found herself standing at the window of her office, looking out at the city lights. She thought about David, about the trust he had placed in her. What would he want her to do? With a heavy sigh, Emily returned to her desk and began revising the projections. It was painful, watching the potential profits shrink with each adjustment, but she knew it was the right thing to do. By the time she finished, it was well past midnight. Emily was just packing up to leave when her phone buzzed with a text from David just landed, coming to the office. "Need to see you." Her heart raced as she replied, "I'm still here. See you soon." The anticipation of seeing David after so long warred with her anxiety over the revised projections. How would he react to the changes? Would he be disappointed in her? 30 minutes later, Emily heard familiar footsteps approaching her office. She stood up as David appeared in the doorway, looking tired but relieved to be back. "Emily," he said, a warm smile spreading across his face. Without thinking, Emily moved around her desk and pulled David into a hug. He stiffened for a moment in surprise before relaxing into the embrace. "Welcome back," Emily said softly, pulling away after a moment that felt both too long and not long enough. David's smile faltered slightly as he took in the stacks of papers on Emily's desk and the fatigue evident on her face. "You've been working too hard," he said, his voice tinged with concern. Emily shrugged. "There's been a lot to do. How's Lily?" "She's doing much better," David replied. "Thank you for asking. And thank you for everything you've done here. Sandra's kept me updated. You've been amazing, Emily." Emily felt a flush of pride at his words, but it was quickly followed by a pang of guilt. "Actually, David, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's about the expansion project." David's expression grew serious as Emily explained the situation with the projections and Thomas's concerns. She showed him the revised numbers, watching his face carefully for any reaction. When she finished, David was silent for a long moment, studying the documents before him. Finally, he looked up at Emily, his expression unreadable. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. "You're not disappointed?" David shook his head. "Disappointed. Emily, I'm incredibly proud of you. It takes real courage to make a decision like this, especially when you've invested so much in the project." He stood up, moving around the desk to stand next to her. "This is exactly why I trust you, Emily. You have the integrity and the strength to do what's right, even when it's difficult." Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by David's praise and the emotional toll of the past few weeks. "I was so worried about letting you down," she admitted. David reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch sent a shiver down Emily's spine. "You could never let me down, Emily," he said softly. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Emily found herself leaning slightly towards David, drawn by an invisible force. But before anything could happen, a knock at the door jolted them back to reality. Sandra stood in the doorway, her eyes widening slightly at the scene before her. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, her tone neutral. "But the board is requesting an emergency meeting, David. They want an update on the situation with Ryan and the expansion project." David nodded, stepping away from Emily. "Of course, I'll be right there." He turned back to Emily. "We'll continue this discussion later." Emily nodded, her heart still racing. As David left with Sandra, Emily sank into her chair, her mind whirling. She had made the right decision with the projections, but now she faced an even more complex ethical dilemma. Her feelings for David were becoming impossible to ignore, but pursuing a relationship with him could jeopardize everything they had worked for. As she gathered her things to finally head home, Emily knew that the coming days would bring even greater challenges. The threat from Ryan still loomed, the expansion project hung in the balance, and her relationship with David was evolving in ways she had never anticipated. Whatever happened next, Emily was certain of one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. The days following David's return were a whirlwind of activity. The revised expansion plans were presented to the board, who, after initial skepticism, approved the more conservative approach. Emily felt a surge of pride at this victory, tempered by the knowledge that greater challenges still lay ahead. One morning, as Emily was grabbing coffee in the break room, she overheard two colleagues whispering urgently. "Did you hear? Ryan's been spotted in town," one said. "No way," the other replied. "I thought he was long gone after what happened." Emily's blood ran cold. She hurried back to her office, her mind racing. If Ryan was back, it could only mean one thing: he was ready to make his move. She was about to call David when her computer pinged with an incoming email. The sender was unknown, but the subject line made her heart stop. "Time's up, Sullivan Enterprises." With trembling hands, Emily opened the email. It contained a single line of text: "Check your favorite news site in 1 hour. The truth will be revealed." Emily immediately forwarded the email to David and Julian, then began frantically refreshing news sites, dreading what she might find. Exactly 1 hour later, the story broke. A major financial news outlet published an expose on Sullivan Enterprises, detailing allegations of bribery, financial mismanagement, and corporate espionage. The article cited anonymous sources and leaked documents, painting a damning picture of the company's practices. Within minutes, Emily's phone was ringing off the hook. Reporters were clamoring for comments, investors were panicking, and the company's stock was in freefall. David burst into her office, his face ashen. "Emergency meeting in the conference room, now." So as they hurried to the meeting, Emily could see the fear and uncertainty on the faces of her colleagues. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense, with board members and executives arguing heatedly about how to respond to the crisis. "We need to issue a statement immediately," one board member insisted. "No, we should wait until we know exactly what we're dealing with," another countered. David raised his hand for silence. "I know everyone is scared and angry right now, but we need to stay calm and think this through rationally." He turned to Emily. "You've been at the center of our efforts to counter Ryan's threats. What do you think we should do?" Emily felt all eyes in the room turn to her. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "But I think we need to go on the offensive. Ryan's counting on us to be reactive, to scramble to defend ourselves. Instead, we need to take control of the narrative." She outlined a plan, a bold, risky strategy that involved coming clean about Ryan's actions, detailing the steps the company had taken to address past mistakes, and highlighting the ethical reforms they had implemented. "It's a gamble," Emily admitted, "but I believe it's our best chance to turn this around." There was a moment of silence as everyone absorbed her words. Then, slowly, heads began to nod in agreement. David smiled at Emily, pride evident in his eyes. "All right, let's do it. Emily, I want you to lead this effort. Work with our PR team to craft the statement. The rest of us will start reaching out to our key stakeholders." As the meeting dispersed, David held Emily back. "That was impressive," he said softly. "You've really come into your own these past few months." Emily felt a flush of pleasure at his words, but before she could respond, Julian burst into the room. "We've got him," Julian said, breathless with excitement. "We've traced the source of the leaks. It's definitely Ryan, and we know where he is." David's expression hardened. "Where?" "A hotel downtown," Julian replied. "What do you want to do?" David turned to Emily, his eyes questioning. She knew what he was asking. Did she want to be part of this final confrontation? Emily nodded firmly. "I'm coming with you." The drive to the hotel was tense, filled with unspoken anxieties. As they pulled up to the building, Emily felt a mix of fear and determination. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of Sullivan Enterprises. They found Ryan in the hotel bar, nursing a drink and looking far too smug for someone who had just potentially destroyed a multi-million-dollar company. "David," Ryan said as they approached, a cold smile on his face. "And Emily, what a pleasant surprise." "It's over, Ryan," David said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "We know you're behind the leak." Ryan shrugged. taking another sip of his drink. "Prove it." Emily stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "We don't need to prove it, Ryan. We're not here to threaten you or to try to stop the story from spreading. It's too late for that." Ryan's smug expression faltered slightly, confusion replacing his confidence. "Then why are you here?" "To thank you," Emily said, earning shocked looks from both Ryan and David. She continued, her voice growing stronger. "You've given us the opportunity to come clean, to address our past mistakes and show the world that Sullivan Enterprises is committed to ethical business practices." David, catching on to Emily's strategy, nodded. "We're going public with everything, Ryan. The bribery attempts, your embezzlement, all of it. But we're also going to show how we've changed, how we've implemented safeguards to prevent anything like this from happening again." Ryan's face paled. "You're bluffing. You'll destroy the company." Emily shook her head. "No, Ryan, we're saving it. By being transparent, by taking responsibility for our mistakes and showing how we've learned from them. We're going to earn communion's bacon." She leaned in close, her voice low and intense. "You thought you were destroying Sullivan Enterprises, but you've actually given us the chance to make it stronger than ever." Ryan slumped in his chair, the full weight of his failure crashing down on him. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he muttered. "I was supposed to win." David signaled to Julian, who had been waiting nearby with 2 police officers. As Ryan was led away, David turned to Emily, his expression a mix of admiration and something deeper, more personal. "That was brilliant," he said softly. "You never cease to amaze me, Emily." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "We did it together," she replied, "as a team." As they left the hotel, Emily's phone buzzed with notifications. Their statement had been released, and social media was already buzzing with reactions. To her relief, many of the responses were positive, praising the company's honesty and commitment to change. In the car ride back to the office, Emily found herself sitting close to David, their shoulders touching. The adrenaline of the confrontation was wearing off, replaced by a different kind of tension. "Emily," David said softly, turning to face her, "I think it's time we talked about." Emily's heart raced. She knew this conversation had been coming, but now that it was here, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. "David, she began, but was cut off by the ringing of David's phone. He answered it, his expression growing serious as he listened. "I understand, we'll be right there." Hanging up, he turned back to Emily, apology written across his face. "The board wants an immediate meeting to discuss next steps." Emily nodded, pushing down her disappointment. "Of course, the company comes first." As they headed back to face the board, Emily couldn't help but feel that a crucial moment had passed. The crisis with Ryan might be over, but the challenges, both professional and personal, were far from finished. Whatever came next, Emily knew that her life and her relationship with David would never be the same again. The weeks following Ryan's arrest were a whirlwind of activity for Sullivan Enterprises. The company's bold move to come clean about past mistakes and commit to ethical reforms had initially caused a sharp drop in stock prices, but as the dust settled, investors began to respond positively to the transparency and decisive action. Emily found herself at the center of the restructuring efforts. Her innovative approach to crisis management had earned her the respect of the board and her colleagues. She worked tirelessly, often late into the night, to implement new compliance protocols and oversee the restructuring of departments that had been compromised by Ryan's actions. One evening, as she was reviewing the latest draft of the new corporate ethics policy, David knocked on her office door. "Emily, do you have a moment?" he asked, his expression a mix of exhaustion and something else she couldn't quite read. "Of course, David, come in," she replied, gesturing to the chairing case from her desk. David sat down, running a hand through his hair, a gesture Emily had come to recognize as a sign of stress. "I wanted to talk to you about your role in the company moving forward." Emily felt her heart rate quicken. Despite their closeness during the crisis, things had been somewhat strained between them since the confrontation with Ryan. The conversation they had almost had in the car seemed to hang between them, unspoken but ever present. "What about my role?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. David leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. "The board has been incredibly impressed with your work, Emily. Not just during the crisis, but in the aftermath as well. We feel that you've more than proven yourself capable of taking on greater responsibility." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying, David?" "We want to offer you a position as Chief Operating Officer," David said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You'd be working directly under me, overseeing the day-to-day operations of the company and playing a key role in shaping our future direction." Emily sat back, stunned. "COO? but I've only been with the company for a short time. Surely there are others more qualified with more experience." David shook his head. "Experience isn't everything, Emily. You've shown incredible insight, integrity, and leadership. You're exactly what this company needs as we move forward." Emily's mind raced. The offer was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of, a validation of all her hard work and sacrifices. But she couldn't ignore the complications it might bring to her already complex relationship with David. I don't know what to say," she finally managed. David's expression softened. "You don't have to decide right now. Take some time to think about it." "But Emily," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I want you to know that this offer is based solely on your merits and what's best for the company. It has nothing to do with any personal feelings that might exist between us." The air in the room seemed to thicken at his words. Emily felt her cheeks flush. "David, But before she could finish, there was a knock at the door. Sandra entered, looking apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, but the legal team needs to see you both. There's been a development in the case against Ryan." David nodded, standing up. "Would be right there." He turned back to Emily. "Think about the offer, okay? We can talk more later." As they walked to the meeting, Emily's mind whirled with conflicting emotions. The COO position was an incredible opportunity, but could she take it without addressing the unresolved tension between her and David? The meeting with the legal team provided a welcome distraction. Ryan, facing mounting evidence against him, had agreed to a plea deal. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he would provide detailed information about his illegal activities and testify against some of the corrupt officials he had dealt with. "This is good news," the lead lawyer explained. "It means we can avoid a lengthy, public trial that could further damage the company's reputation." As the meeting concluded, Emily found herself standing next to David. "It's really over, isn't it?" she said softly. David nodded, a weary smile on his face. "Thanks to you, Emily. We wouldn't have made it through this without you." Their eyes met, and for a moment the rest of the world seemed to fade away. Emily felt herself leaning towards David, drawn by an invisible force. But the spell was broken by Sandra clearing her throat nearby. "David, the press is waiting for a statement about Ryan's plea deal." David straightened, his professional mask sliding back into place. "Right, I'll be right there." He turned back to Emily. "We'll talk soon, okay?" Emily nodded, watching him leave with a mixture of longing and frustration. How much longer could they dance around their feelings? Over the next few days, Emily threw herself into her work, trying to distract herself from the looming decision about the COO position and her complicated feelings for David. She oversaw the implementation of new transparency measures, worked with HR to revamp the company's hiring and promotion practices, and helped draft a new mission statement that emphasized ethical business practices and corporate responsibility. Despite her best efforts to focus solely on work, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was at a crossroads, both professionally and personally. The CEO position was a dream come true, but taking it would mean committing to a long-term future at Sullivan Enterprises, a future that would be inextricably linked with David. As she sat in her office late one night, staring out at the city lights, Emily realized that she couldn't make this decision without addressing the elephant in the room. She and David needed to have an honest conversation about their feelings and what it meant for their working relationship. With a deep breath, Emily picked up her phone and typed out a message to David. "We need to talk about everything tomorrow." A moment later, her phone buzzed with his reply. "You're right. Dinner at my place, 8 p.m. Emily's heart raced as she typed her response, "I'll be there." As she gathered her things to head home, Emily knew that tomorrow would be a turning point. Whatever happened at dinner with David would shape not just her career, but her entire future. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. For better or worse, everything was about to change. The following evening, Emily stood nervously outside David's penthouse apartment, her hand poised to knock. Their dinner conversation had been intense, emotional, and ultimately transformative. They had laid all their cards on the table, discussing their feelings, the complications of a potential relationship, and what it would mean for their professional lives. In the end, they had made a decision. Emily would accept that COO position, but they would keep their personal relationship strictly professional for now. So both agreed that the company's stability and reputation had to come first, especially in the wake of the recent scandals. As Emily walked into the office the next morning, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. David had called an all-hands meeting to announce the changes in the company structure, including her promotion. The large conference room was buzzing with anticipation as employees filed in. Emily took her place near the front, acutely aware of the curious glances and whispers around her. Sandra caught her eye and gave her an encouraging smile. David stepped up to the podium, his presence immediately commanding attention. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. As you all know, our company has been through some significant challenges recently. But thanks to the hard work and dedication of everyone in this room, we've not only weathered the storm, but have emerged stronger. He paused, his eyes scanning the room. Today I'm excited to announce some changes that will help guide Sullivan Enterprises into a new era of ethical leadership and innovation. Emily's heart raced as David began outlining the new company structure. He spoke about increased transparency, stricter compliance measures, and a renewed focus on corporate responsibility. Then, finally, he came to the announcement she had been waiting for. And finally, I'm thrilled to announce that Emily Adams will be stepping into the role of Chief Operating Officer, David said, his voice filled with genuine. Emily has shown exceptional leadership and integrity throughout our recent challenges. Our innovative thinking and commitment to ethical business practices make her the ideal person to help lead our company forward. A ripple of surprise went through the room. Emily could feel all eyes turned to her, a mix of shock, admiration, and in some cases, barely concealed resentment on their faces. David continued, I know some of you may have questions about this decision. Emily is relatively new to our company, but she has more than proven her capabilities. I have full confidence that she will excel in this role and help guide Sullivan Enterprises to new heights. As the meeting concluded, Emily found herself surrounded by colleagues offering congratulations. Many seemed genuinely happy for her, but she couldn't help noticing the tight smiles and forced enthusiasm from others. Sandra was one of the first to approach her. Congratulations, Emily, she said, pulling her into a brief hug. You've earned this. Thank you, Sandra, Emily replied, grateful for her mentor's support. I couldn't have done it without your guidance. As the day progressed, Emily began to feel the weight of her new position. She overheard snippets of conversations in the break room and hallways, not all of them positive. Can you believe it? She's been here, a few months? One employee whispered to another. It must be nice to have friends in high places, another muttered. Emily tried to shake off the negative comments, focusing instead on the tasks ahead. She had a mountain of work to do to prepare for her new role, and she was determined to prove that David's faith in her was justified. Later that afternoon, as Emily was reviewing some financial reports in her new office, still feeling slightly out of place in the spacious room, there was a knock at her door. She looked up to see Mark, one of her colleagues from the finance department, who had been less than welcoming when she first joined the company. What, got a minute? Mark asked, his expression unreadable. Of course, Mark. Come in, Emily replied, bracing herself for what might be an uncomfortable conversation. Mark sat down across from her, studying her for a moment before speaking. I'll be honest, Emily. When you first came here, I didn't think much of you. I thought you were just another pretty face who got lucky. Emily felt her cheeks flush with anger, but before she could respond, Mark held up a hand. But I was wrong, he continued. I've watched how you handled the crisis with Ryan, how you've worked tirelessly to implement new policies and turn this company around. And you've earned my respect, and I wanted you to know that. Emily blinked, surprised by the sudden change in Mark's attitude. I thank you, Mark. That means a lot to me. Mark nodded, standing up. Just don't let us down, okay? A lot of people are counting on you now. As Mark left, Emily felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew that not everyone would be as quick to come around as Mark had been. She would have to work twice as hard to prove herself, to show that she deserved this position not because of any personal connection to David, but because of her skills and dedication. The rest of the day flew by in a blur of meetings and paperwork. As Emily was preparing to leave for the night, she received a text from David. How was your first day as COA? She smiled, typing back, challenging but exciting. I'm ready for this. David's response came quickly. I never doubted you for a second. Get some rest. Big day tomorrow. As Emily gathered her things and headed out, she caught her reflection in the window. The woman staring back at her looked confident, determined, and ready to take on the world. She had come so far from the waitress who had overheard a conversation and made a fateful decision to speak up. Walking out of the building, Emily felt a mix of emotions, pride in how far she'd come, determination to prove herself in her new role, and a touch of sadness at the personal sacrifice she and David agreed to make for the good of the company. But most of all, she felt hopeful. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with obstacles both professional and personal, but Emily was ready to face them head-on. She had found her place in the world, and she was determined to make the most of this opportunity, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As weeks passed, Emily settled into her role as COO, throwing herself wholeheartedly into the task of restructuring and revitalizing Sullivan Enterprises. Her days were filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and decision-making that would shape the company's future. Amid the long hours and intense pressure, Emily found herself thriving in her new position. However, the personal cost of her professional success was becoming increasingly apparent. Her agreement with David to keep their relationship strictly professional had seemed logical at the time, but the constant proximity and shared challenges were making it difficult to maintain that boundary. One evening, as Emily was working late in her office, there was a soft knock at the door. She looked up to see David standing there, his tie loosened and jacket slung over his arm. "You're here late," he said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Emily returned the smile, feeling the familiar flutter in her stomach that she'd been trying to ignore. "Just finishing up some reports for tomorrow's board meeting." "What's your excuse?" Hubbard chuckled, stepping into the office. "Same as yours, I suppose. The joys of leadership, right?" There was a moment of comfortable silence between them, filled with unspoken words and suppressed feelings. Emily found herself studying David's face, noting the new lines of stress around his eyes and the slight slump in his shoulders that spoke of exhaustion. "David," she began, hesitating for a moment before continuing, "are we doing the right thing? With us, I mean." David's expression turned serious. He closed the office door and sat down across from her. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately," he admitted. "When we decided to keep things professional, it seemed like the best choice for the company. But now it feels like we're both just going through the motions," Emily finished for him. "We're so focused on appearing professional that we're not being true to ourselves." David nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I know. And it's affecting our work too. I find myself second-guessing decisions, worried that I might be favoring you unconsciously or overcompensating by being too hard on you." Emily leaned forward, her voice low and intense. "We can't keep going like this, David. It's not fair to us, and it's not fair to the company. We need to find a way to balance our personal feelings with our professional responsibilities." Just as David was about to respond, there was another knock at the door. Sandra entered, her eyes widening slightly as she took in the scene before her. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, her tone neutral, "but I thought you both should know. There are rumors circulating among the staff about your relationship." Emily felt her cheeks flush. "What kind of rumors?" Sandra sighed, closing the door behind her. "The usual office gossip. Some people think Emily's promotion was due to favoritism. Others are speculating about whether you two are secretly involved." David stood up, pacing the room. "This is exactly what we were trying to avoid." "Maybe that was our mistake," Emily said quietly. Both David and Sandra turned to look at her. "We've been so focused on avoiding the appearance of impropriety that we've created an atmosphere of secrecy and speculation. What if we were just honest?" David's brow furrowed. "Honest? You mean go public with our feelings?" Emily nodded, feeling a surge of confidence. "Yes, we acknowledge that there are feelings between us, but we also make it clear that we're committed to maintaining professional boundaries for the good of the company. We could implement additional oversight measures to ensure there's no favoritism or conflict of interest." Sandra looked thoughtful. "It's risky, but it could work. Transparency has been a key part of our reform efforts. This could be seen as an extension of that commitment." David was quiet for a moment, considering the idea. Finally, he turned to Emily, a mix of admiration and affection in his eyes. "You never cease to amaze me, you know that. It's a bold move, but I think you're right. It's time we stopped hiding." The next day, David called an all-hands meeting. Standing side by side at the podium, he and Emily addressed the company. "We've called you here today to address some rumors that have been circulating," David began. "In the spirit of transparency that we've committed to as a company, Emily and I, to all of you." Emily stepped forward, her heart racing but her voice steady. "David and I have developed feelings for each other," she said, hearing the collective intake of breath. Said, "However, we've also made a commitment to this company and to all of you. We've agreed to maintain professional boundaries and focus on our work." David continued, "We understand that this situation could raise concerns about favoritism or conflicts of interest. That's why we're implementing additional oversight measures. All major decisions involving Emily's department will be reviewed by an independent committee of board members." As they outlined the details of their plan, Emily could see a mix of reactions in the audience. Some looked shocked, others nodded in approval at their honesty, while a few wore expressions of skepticism. When they finished speaking, there was a moment of silence before someone in the back of the room started clapping. Slowly, others joined in, until the applause filled the room. As the meeting dispersed, Emily and David found themselves surrounded by colleagues offering words of support and appreciation for their honesty. Sandra approached them, a smile on her face. Well, that was certainly unexpected, but I think it was the right call. People respect honesty. Later that evening, as Emily was preparing to leave for the day, David appeared at her office door. "Dinner?" he asked, a hopeful smile on his face. "As colleagues, of course." Emily grinned, grabbing her coat. "I'd like that. As colleagues." As they walked out of the building together, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The road ahead would still be challenging, balancing their personal feelings with their professional responsibilities. And for the first time in months, she felt like they were on the right path. They had chosen honesty over pretense, transparency over secrecy. And in doing so, they had not only strengthened their relationship, but also reinforced the values they wanted Sullivan Enterprises to embody. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Emily was confident that together, they could face them head-on. 6 months had passed since Emily and David's candid announcement to the company. In that time, Sullivan Enterprises had not only stabilized but had begun to thrive under their joint leadership. The transparency they had championed had earned them respect from both employees and industry peers, and their commitment to ethical business practices was setting a new standard in the corporate world. On a crisp autumn evening, the company gathered for its annual gala, celebrating a year of transformation and success. The grand ballroom of a luxurious hotel was filled with employees, board members, and industry partners, all dressed in their finest attire. Emily stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. She wore an elegant emerald green gown that complemented her eyes, her hair swept up in an intricate updo. As she chatted with colleagues and partners, she couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in the past year. David appeared at her side, looking dashing in a well-tailored tuxedo. "You look beautiful," he whispered, careful to maintain a professional distance despite the warmth in his eyes. Emily smiled, feeling a familiar flutter in her stomach. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied with a playful wink. As they made their way through the crowd, Emily was struck by the positive energy in the room. Colleagues who had once viewed her with suspicion now greeted her warmly, sharing stories of recent successes and exciting new projects. Sandra approached them, raising her glass in a toast. "To the dynamic duo," she said with a smile. "You two have really turned this company around." "We couldn't have done it without you, Sandra," Emily replied sincerely. "Your support has meant everything." As the evening progressed, David took to the stage to deliver a speech. Emily watched from the sidelines, feeling a surge of pride as he addressed the crowd. "A year ago, Sullivan Enterprises was at a crossroads," David began. "We faced challenges that threatened not just our bottom line, but our very integrity as a company. But thanks to the hard work, dedication, and unwavering ethical commitment of every person in this room, we've not only weathered the storm, we've emerged stronger than ever." He paused, his eyes finding Emily in the crowd. "I'd like to take a moment to recognize someone who has been instrumental in our transformation. Our COO, Emily Adams, whose insight, courage, and leadership have been the driving force behind many of our successes this year." The room erupted in applause as Emily made her way to the stage, her cheeks flushing at the unexpected recognition. As she stood beside David, she felt a sense of belonging and accomplishment that she had never experienced before. "Thank you, David," she said, turning to address the audience. "But the credit doesn't belong to just two people. It belongs to all of you. Every employee who embraced change, every partner who stood by us during difficult times, every board member who supported our vision for a more ethical and transparent company. This is your success, and I'm honored to be a part of it." As Emily and David left the stage, they were immediately surrounded by well-wishers. Board members praised their leadership. Employees shared stories of how the company's new direction had positively impacted their work, and industry partners expressed their admiration for Sullivan Enterprises' commitment to ethical practices. Later in the evening, Emily found a quiet moment to slip away to the hotel's rooftop garden. As she looked out over the city lights, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From a waitress who overheard a conversation to the COO of a major corporation, it seemed almost unbelievable. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see David approaching. "Needed some air?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. Emily nodded, just taking a moment to process everything. "It's been quite a year, hasn't it?" David chuckled softly. "That's an understatement, but I wouldn't change a thing." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in thought. Finally, David spoke again, his voice soft and sincere. "And you know, Emily, when you first warned me about Ryan, I never could have imagined where it would lead. And you've changed everything, for the company and for me personally." Emily turned to face him, her heart racing. "David, But before she could finish, David gently placed a finger on her lips. "I know we agreed to keep things professional, and I respect that. But I can't help feeling that we're denying ourselves something special. We've proven that we can work together effectively. that we can put the company first. Maybe it's time we gave ourselves a chance at happiness too. Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. I've been thinking the same thing, she admitted. I'm tired of pretending that what I feel for you is just professional admiration. It's so much more than that. David reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. So what do you say, Emily? Are you willing to take a chance on us? Instead of answering with words, Emily leaned in and kissed him. It was a kiss filled with a year's worth of suppressed emotions, of challenges overcome and triumphs shared. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and smiling. I'll take that as a yes, David said, his eyes twinkling. Emily laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. Definitely a yes, but we'll need to be careful to make sure this doesn't affect our work or the company's reputation. David nodded, taking her hand in his. We'll figure it out together, just like we've figured everything else out. As they made their way back to the gala, hand in hand, Emily felt a sense of completeness. She had found not just professional success, but personal fulfillment as well. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, but she was ready to face them, with David by her side, and with the strength and integrity that had brought her this far. The night air was crisp with the promise of new beginnings as Emily and David rejoined the celebration. As they mingled with their colleagues, their intertwined fingers, a subtle but clear statement. Emily knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, not just for her and David, but for Sullivan Enterprises as a whole. The company had weathered a storm and emerged stronger, more ethical, and more united. And at its helm stood two leaders who had found in each other not just professional partners but soulmates. As the music swelled and laughter filled the air, Emily looked around the room, filled with gratitude for the journey that had brought her here and excitement for the future that lay ahead. This story has come to a natural conclusion with the resolution of both the professional and personal storylines. However, if you'd like an epilogue to provide a glimpse into the future and tie up any loose ends, here's a brief additional section, 400 words. Epilogue, 2 years later. The sun streamed through the large windows of Emily's office at Sullivan Enterprises, illuminating the various awards and accolades that now adorned her walls. Among them was a framed magazine cover featuring Emily and David, with the headline Corporate America's Power Couple, Redefining Ethical Leadership. Emily smiled as she read over the final draft of her speech for tomorrow's shareholder meeting. Under her and David's leadership, Sullivan Enterprises had not only recovered from the scandal, but had become a beacon of ethical business practices in the corporate world. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. David entered, a warm smile on his face and a small velvet box in his hand. "Ready for the big day tomorrow?" he asked, perching on the edge of her desk. Emily nodded, closing her laptop. "Just finished the speech. I think the shareholders will be pleased with our progress." "I have no doubt," David replied, "but before we focus on tomorrow, I have something important to ask you." Emily's heart skipped a beat as David got down on one knee, opening the velvet box to reveal a stunning engagement ring. "Emily Adams," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "you came into my life unexpectedly, saved my company and stole my heart. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears of joy sprang to Emily's eyes as she nodded emphatically. "Yes, David, 1,000 times yes." As David slipped the ring onto her finger, they both laughed and cried, overwhelmed by the moment. Just then, Sandra burst into the office, a look of excitement on her face. "Sorry to interrupt, but you both need to see this." She handed them a tablet displaying a breaking news article. The headline read, "Ryan Sullivan completes rehabilitation program, pledges to make amends." Emily and David exchanged surprised looks. "Do you think he's sincere?" Emily asked. David shrugged, a thoughtful expression on his face. "People can change. Maybe this is his chance at redemption." As they discussed the implications of Ryan's apparent reformation, Emily couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd all come, from scandal and betrayal to success and love. It had been an incredible journey. Looking at the ring on her finger and the man she loved by her side, Emily felt a profound sense of gratitude. Whatever challenges the future might hold, she knew they would face them together, with integrity, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to doing what was right. The story of Sullivan Enterprises was far from over, but with Emily and Dave at the helm, its future had never looked brighter. In life's darkest moments, when betrayal shadows your path and doubt clouds your future, remember this: your integrity is your greatest asset. It takes just one courageous act, one moment of standing up for what's right, to set in motion a journey of transformation. And Emily's story teaches us that true success isn't measured by titles or wealth, but by the lives we touch and the positive change we create. It reminds us that our past doesn't define us. It's our choices in the face of adversity that shape our destiny. Love, when built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared values, can weather any storm. It can transform not just our personal lives, but entire organizations and communities. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity in disguise. It's in our darkest hours that we often find our greatest strength. Your voice matters. Your actions ripple outwards, touching lives in ways you may never fully realize. So stand tall in your truth. Embrace the journey with all its twists and turns. For it's not just about reaching the destination, but about who we become along the way. In the end, a life lived with integrity, courage, and love is a life truly well lived. Your story isn't over. Like Emily, you have the power to turn the page and write a new chapter. Believe in yourself, stay true to your values, and watch as the world transforms around you. Your greatest chapter is yet to be written. We hope Emily and David's journey has inspired you as much as it has us. Now we'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of their story resonated with you the most? Have you ever faced a similar ethical dilemma in your professional life? Share your experiences and insights in the comments below. Your story could be the inspiration someone else needs today. And if you enjoyed this tale of courage, integrity, and love triumphing over adversity, why not join our community? Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on more inspiring stories that will motivate you to be yourself, both personally and professionally. Remember, every subscription helps us reach more people with these powerful messages of hope and transformation. Together, we can create a world where integrity and compassion guide our actions. So go ahead, leave a comment, subscribe, and be part of this incredible journey. Your voice matters, and we can't wait to hear from you.